Welcome to the Next in Time podcast, where we explore the fascinating depths of how people have the potential of impacting the world with the mission and vision of their project. Join us on this audio journey as we uncover the hidden gems of one's vision, delve into thought-provoking discussions of why they're pursuing it, and see how they're going to make an impact. If you're a curious person, this podcast is your go-to destination.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Next in Time podcast. I'm your host, ST, and today our guest is Josh Lawlor. He is the founder of the Film Shoot Rental Roadmap, which has a very unique approach on how you can make rental income through offering your home for film shoots. He is looking to provide a new form of rental opportunity that isn't your typical rental strategy of having tenants and go through turmoil. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Great, thanks for having me, ST.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on, and really, when I stumbled upon you, when I was realizing that you've got a very unique approach on how you can make a good amount of money offering people, your own home for film shoots in a way. So what is that like?
Yeah. I mean, look, film shoots. It's definitely a little known, lesser known niche in real estate. But it might be worthwhile. I didn't just immediately jump into film shoots, right? So maybe it's worth a little bit of background and a little bit of kind of walk through, my own real estate journey and kind of how I landed on film shoots. Sort of sets the scene a little bit and provides some context.
Yeah, before we go into that, I just wanted to ask, were you always into the film industry in a way?
No, not at all. So that's kind of one of the myths that I talk about in Common Question is, well, do I have to be somehow connected to the film shoot industry to do this? So the answer is a resounding no, right? So I worked in technology, nothing to do with film shoots. So we'll get that myth out of the way. So look, I've been doing film shoots for a few years, but before I get into film shoots, I think maybe some of your audience this maybe resonates with some of your listeners, but so probably about, I would say, maybe about 10 years ago or so, my wife and I embarked on a big renovation, so home renovation of our primary home. We had bought this house kind of right after the 2008 financial crisis. It was that classic sort of ugliest house on the block. The kitchen was like a time capsule to 1984. We knew it needed work. We knew we could kind of fix it up and create some value. Yep.
Wait, where was this at?
When or where?
No, where?
Oh, so this is in. So I'm in the Northeast. I'm north of New York City. So I'm in the northern suburbs of New York City. So we got this house and we decided that we lived in it for a few years, and then we decided we would do sort of a big gut renovation and addition. That process actually went surprisingly smoothly, and in doing so, so we created a lot of equity. So there was kind of a lot of additional value created. So that was really my first sort of introduction to real estate and creating value through real estate. With the equity that we created, we leveraged a home equity line of credit, and we were able to. Then we next invested in some single family homes in the Southeast. So kind of got into long distance single family rentals. So we kind of picked up a few lower priced single family homes in the Atlanta, Georgia market and in the Jacksonville, Florida market.
Those markets have been pretty hot. I mean, I lived in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and that was a time when the property markets down there it was like the prime time to buy houses over there.
Yeah. So we actually, we didn't catch it, at the ideal time. And I think it's, in real estate, you can never catch it at the ideal time. But we invested, this was back in around 2016. And even then I thought, we're kind of late, we didn't time perfectly. Prices have already been going up. And at the time, I was looking more from a cash flow perspective. I thought, okay, these might cash flow a couple $100 a month and that's okay. But the appreciation has really been a big win for us. So these homes that we bought have all since 2016 have all kind of doubled or more than doubled in value from our purchase price, and we've been able to before rates had gone up, we refinanced actually cash out refied a couple times on these properties, and with that equity that we created and the cash out refis, that allowed us to pursue kind of the most recent project, which is we ended up selling our previous home, the one that we had renovated, bought in the area, and found an older home that we knew we wanted to renovate again. And we had architect, because we had such a relatively smooth experience last time. We figured, okay, let's just go through this again, create more value. So we found this property, and the only issue was it was relatively close to the street, so the setbacks, right, when you kind of consider local zoning. But we talked to a handful of different architects, and every architect we talked to said, you know what, as long as you don't make it worse, so as long as your plans for the addition sort of follow that line, you should be fine. Well, of course,
this was in Atlanta, right?
No, this is back in this is kind of back in the New York metropolitan area. So again, kind of back to our primary home. And so we took our building plans to the planning board, and they said absolutely not. They said with these setbacks. So despite what the architects had told us, so we had to kind of say, okay, we can either do a small renovation, but that wasn't really the business plan here. The idea was to, again, kind of do an addition, create some value. So we ultimately ended up doing a tear down rebuild. It wasn't our original plan, but that we had to tear down and kind of push back a ways. And by the way, tip for anyone who is doing this, the silver lining was we actually ended up donating, before the teardown, we donated the structure to a local fire department for training. So it's kind of a little known donation that you can take advantage of if you're doing a tear down and you have a local fire department that's a sort of a not-for-profit organization. You can actually donate, and you get your property appraised. You can actually donate the structure, not the land, and the local fire departments love it because they can actually practice their techniques on a real house. And so it's great training. It's a real help for the local fire department, and you get a pretty nice tax benefit because you're essentially donating the value of whatever structure you're knocking down. So we took advantage of that and built this new house. And when we moved back, I'm kind of missing out a key point of the story over here. So when we decided to do the tear down rebuild, we had to find a place to live, obviously, right? We couldn't live in the house while we were doing renovations because we're tearing it down. And so at the time, it was really challenging to find a rental in the area. We didn't have any family in the area that we could stay with. We couldn't find a rental. So we had to go just outside of the school district boundaries. And I've got a couple kids in schools. And so we found a place, pretty convenient, but technically just right over the boundary. We got a letter during the construction's going on. We're going about our lives. We get this letter from the school about a few weeks before Thanksgiving. And it's this sort of sternly worded letter talking about, it's come to our attention that you're no longer residing in the school district. Please schedule a meeting, immediately to discuss this matter. We said, okay, this is kind of weird, but we'll kind of go in, we'll sort it out, clear up any confusion, say, hey, look, we were going to do this renovation. We had to do a tear down. It's taking a little longer. We had to find a place to stay. We went in and the school district was not having any of it. And so they basically said, you've got two choices. You've got 2 weeks and you'll have to remove your children from this school and re-enroll them in the local district where you are temporarily. And then when you're done and you move back in, you can move them back, which is kind of crazy.
That's always the most bizarre thing about school districts is that when your home is just like one slide, like when it's like a meter away from the zone where you're supposed to be able to send your kids to that school, all your plans just go awry.
But let's be clear, the home that we were doing the construction on is in the district, and the whole time we're paying taxes to the district. This is simply the rental, our temporary rental that happens to be outside of the district. And so they said you can either you got 2 weeks to move your kids out of school, or you can pay us quote unquote tuition for and allow your kids to stay in the public school. So I view it essentially as extortion by the school district to kind of a shakedown for money. And so I bring this up because this was kind of a factor in deciding to start renting for film shoots, because after kind of paying an extra, look, when you do a construction project, anyone who's done real estate construction, you budget for the unknowns, right? You budget for things like, oh, you open up a wall, you don't know what you're going to find. Maybe you have to replace more than you thought, or maybe the price of materials is going to go up. So you always budget a little cushion, right? What we didn't budget for was, kind of this shakedown from the local school district. So after paying, tens of thousands of dollars in tuition, so our kids wouldn't have to be disrupted, we said, you know what? What's a way that we can get this back? Earn this outlay of funds back. And the cash flow from the single family homes was nice, but certainly not gonna move the needle quickly, right? And so when we moved back into the house, we had someone over and they were talking to us and they said, oh, you might want to consider renting your home for shoots, and we had never heard of that. Okay, so we started to look into it, and we said, you know what, why not? We'll give it a shot. We'll see what this can do. And that was kind of the origin story of sort of how we got started in film shoot rentals.
Interesting. It's just someone just told you about it. Like how did they just say that, okay, this is these are the benefits of having for your home and for your income, just having film shoots come into your house.
Yeah. So this was more of an off the cuff comment, right? Like it was simply kind of like, oh, hey, I was reading about these people over here who were doing this, maybe you guys should try it. Our house was fairly empty at the time because we had sort of just moved in, hadn't really fully, kind of gotten settled in. And, it just sort of came up in conversation, and it kind of planted the seed in our head. Right. And so we said, okay, let's look into this. And of course we knew nothing about it. But obviously have since learned quite a bit, sort of learned many lessons the hard way. But, I'm happy I can, kind of go into some of the benefits or, talk about some of the myths. Yeah,
I was just going to segue our conversation towards the benefits of having film shoots compared to other real estate niches.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I've been involved I've done kind of consider like a live and flip, new construction, short-term rentals. I've invested in, small multifamily 2 to 4 unit rentals, but there's some big differences and benefits when it comes to film shoots. So I think the first major benefit is, unlike many other areas of real estate investing, you don't need a down payment, right? You're already living in your asset, okay? So you're living in your home. So not only do you not need to save up for a down payment, you don't need to go through a lengthy underwriting process. So I don't know if anyone, for any listener who's ever had to kind of get a loan for any property, they're asking you for like every piece of paperwork, kind of ever.
Your W-2s, your how much savings you have, or how much you're willing to put
asset
down.
Statements, to everything. And it keeps asking for more. You submit, and then you get more requests. So there's no underwriting.
This is just for like, okay, and also they also ask, how much are you willing to what's your percentage that you're willing to put down? And then this is what I speak to every time I speak with loan officers. These are the same questions they ask, and once I give them my information, then these are the properties that could fit our criteria that you'd be eligible for.
Yeah, and so the beauty of film shoot rentals is, for renting your home for shoots, is you don't need to deal with any of that, right? You're already living in your asset. So you're living in your house. So, and you don't need to underwrite, you don't need to get any financing. And so you can start right away. Okay. So I think kind of that's another big benefit. A lot of times in real estate, it takes time to search for a property. It takes time to get a loan. It takes time to find a tenant, etc. So no down payment, get started right away. The other thing too is in my experience, it can be much more profitable than other traditional real estate investment. And
what will be an example why it's profitable? Because the one thing is that filmmaking is it's not what you call a consistent process. Like, people come and go, people shoot for movies and they end shooting, and then that's like, okay, what's the point of all that? And then versus, let's say if you had a tenant who just pays rent every month just to live in your premises, that's like, there's at least consistency there. But film shoots are like a very on and off process altogether. So
it can be. So you touch on the consistency, but I think it's also worth just clarifying. And so you mentioned something that's quite common when we talk about film shoots. The first thing that comes to mind is big feature films, right? Movies. But the approach that I teach and the experience that I've had is when we're talking about film shoots, we're really talking about, one day commercial productions. So either video or photo shoots, or, think about any business that needs content. So small businesses, large businesses, everyone has a website that you need to keep current. So you need new content, whether still content or video content. Everyone's on social media. So there's always, kind of a need to create new social media content, and you want it to be professional. And so these are the types of ongoing shoots that are happening all the time, and all across the country. So, I think and we'll get sort of back into the come around back to the kind of the money and the profit potential here. But I think it's also worth talking about the fact that, one of the big myths is people think, I have to live near LA, right? Because that's where the movie industry is. But no, that's not the case, because the types of shoots that you're doing are, anywhere where there's a business that has a need for content is a place where shoots will be required. So, so geographically, you can be anywhere in the U.S., outside the U.S., big city, small city, suburb, rural area, because businesses are everywhere. Business owners are everywhere. And so geography is not an issue. I think the other, while we're talking about myths, the other thing is people often think, I have to live in an amazing house, okay, or I have to live in this kind of big mansion. No, that's what I mean. It's a common misconception, but I've actually had a couple experiences, I think, that illustrate that, there is no right home for film shoots. And that's kind of a key message I try to get across to people, okay? Because if you think about it, every shoot has different requirements. So no two shoots are exactly the same. And so, there was early on in our film shoot rental journey, we had an inquiry from a producer who was working for it was an online platform that connected parents to caretakers. So parents could go and search for babysitters, and they were refreshing their website. So they needed to do a shoot to refresh their website content. And they did a scouting visit. That's where they kind of come in advance and check out the place. The director and producer came with a couple of members of the crew, walked around, took some pictures, looked at the lighting. They said, "Okay, Josh, we've got a few more places to look at. We'll give you a call in a few days and let you know what we're thinking." And they called back and they said, "Josh, we loved your house, but we actually would need something that looks like there are little kids living here, and my kids were a little bit older." And so they basically said, "Yeah, we need something, a little more wear and tear, a little more clutter." And so,
they turned down a clean house for something cluttered.
Exactly, because that was the requirement for this shoot. There was another time when, unfortunately, we actually had a plumbing disaster. So we came downstairs in the morning, and overnight, apparently.
Because I think that you wanted to talk about the fact that your house got flooded and you still had to book film shoots for it.
Exactly. So we came down, we had this plumbing disaster, and this water filter exploded overnight, and our entire first floor was flooded. And so we ended up having to demo tear out the wood flooring, remove the countertops, remove the cabinets, everything. And of course, during this time, I'm still getting film shoot inquiries, and I'm, sort of reluctantly saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but we're undergoing renovations. We'll be back in business in 3 or 4 months. Give me a call then if you're, still have a need." But one of these shoots was actually for a company, a startup that makes utility monitoring devices. So think things that attach to your electrical, your gas, and your water line to alert you if there are issues. And when they heard that, my house was going under renovation because of like a flood, water damage, they said, "Oh, actually, that's great. Can we shoot in the damaged area as well? Because we want to show our customers, what can happen when you don't use our device." So they came while we were under construction. We did a shoot. They were in the basement. They were taking pictures of the main floor. So yeah, every shoot is different. Every shoot has unique requirements. So yeah, there's no one type of house.
Right. And also, can you tell me about the tax benefits that work with film shoot rental income versus other kinds of rental income?
Sure. So, it's not that the tax benefits are unique to film shoot rental income, but But I think it's easier to take advantage of, your listeners may have heard of the Augusta rule, right? So the Augusta rule says, and again, with the disclaimer, I'm not a tax professional, so always consult your tax advisor on tax matters. But the Augusta rule stems from years ago, the Masters Golf Tournament that took place in Augusta, Georgia. Locals would rent their homes to people coming in to watch the golf tournament, and they wanted to be exempt from paying income taxes on that rental income. And so they actually lobbied the government to get a tax break, and for a limited amount of time, for no more than 2 weeks or no more than 14 days per year to do this. And they got it. And that 14-day rule, or it's come to be known as the Augusta rule, now applies everywhere in the US for properties where you're renting. So, if you have a short-term rental, an Airbnb, and if you only rent it for 14 days or less, you're not taxed on that income. Okay. And the beauty of film shoot rental income is, look, it's all personal, right? I like the idea of minimizing my taxes. So I actually price my home in such a way, we've sort of calibrated it such that we limit our shoots to 14 days a year. So we kind of optimize for tax efficiency, and we can go through some numbers to kind of illustrate this point in a second. Yeah.
Maybe another conversation that would be a lot better. But I was gonna ask one other question. Is like, what should people who are interested in listing their homes for shoots look for in a listing platform?
Yeah, so there are a number of attributes. So if you search, there are any number of platforms out there that you can use to market or list your home for shoots. But there are a few things that I think really make a difference and things that are important to look for. So first of all, you want to make sure that the platform covers your location. So not all platforms are universal. So there are many local platforms, and if you find a local platform, you can certainly take advantage of that. But you want to make sure that you're not listing on a platform and then you realize that it doesn't cover your geographic area. The other thing I think you want to think about is, look, there are plenty of platforms out there that will charge you to list. And I've tried them, but in my experience, you'll be just fine using free platforms where you don't have to pay any fee up front to list your home. I think another attribute to look for is pricing transparency. So what do I mean by that? There are some listing platforms where you simply list your home, put up some pictures, write a description, but there's no opportunity to set your price. The reason that I don't like that is because I don't like wasting my time. And I find that, trust me, I've gone through this. I've tried platforms where there's not pricing transparency. And what happens is you end up getting people who are interested. You have a conversation, you devote, 20 minutes to a phone call. And then it turns out that their budget is, much lower than your going rate. And so it's a kind of a waste of your time. So you want a platform that allows you to list your price. And I also think that, speaking of pricing, you want pricing flexibility. So what do I mean by that? Shoots come in all shapes and sizes, so to speak, right? You can have the smallest shoot we did was one person. It was a one-person shoot. The biggest shoot we did was closer to like 45 people. Okay.
And this is like, how big was this home when you try to fit in 45 people?
Well, this is like this is a suburban home. So maybe like a 3,000 square feet.
Like a 5-bed, 4-bath kind of house?
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe so. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So usually, like, when you have these film shoots, like, do you charge according to like the production budget? Like, okay, let's say if someone is trying to rent your home for like a small shoot versus, let's say, for like $5,000.
Yeah.
I'm saying the production budget is $5,000. They pay some amount of money for you versus, let's say, they want to do like a feature film that's a much larger budget altogether. So it varies, right, on what you charge?
Yeah. So and this is what I'm getting to in terms of pricing flexibility. So I like platforms that allow what I call tiered pricing, right? So you have a base rate for your smaller shoots. So, and our base rate we've landed on a higher number than when we started. So when we started, we definitely listed much lower than we do now. And we were inundated with inquiries, right? Like, we didn't really know what to price it at. So we priced it too low. And we got just all of these emails coming in from people, and it was a little bit overwhelming. And we quickly learned, okay, we've got to, economics we've got to raise our prices.
Always got to play supply and demand game.
Exactly. So where we are, and again, I'm in a high cost area of the country, so I'm outside of New York City. So if you're near a big city, kind of a high cost area versus a lower cost area of the city, so there's gonna be a range, just like there's gonna be a range on what rents are. But where we are, so we charge $600 an hour as our base rate. Okay, right. So that's a base rate for a shoot size of maybe 1 to 10 people. We raise that price for more people. So if the shoot size is going to be, say, 10, 11 to 20 people, we'll raise it to $700 an hour. If it's 21 to 30 people, $800 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice, like if your average mortgage for that kind of a house could be like $5,000 a month, right?
Yep.
So that means if you can just have several people come in, shoot for about 8-9 hours or something, then that's literally just that could just pay off your mortgage altogether.
Yeah. And and you mentioned, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought up sort of 8 or 9 hours. So when we first started, we had people interested in. They said, "Oh yeah, I would like the pictures. Can we? Yeah, we just need it for an hour, or we just need it for 2 hours, right?" And so my advice to people is, first of all, you're not really optimizing when you allow shoots for 1 or 2 hours. So my recommendation is, and another thing to look for in a listing platform is, you want to be able to set a minimum number of hours. So I always recommend setting a minimum number of hours, at least minimum of 6 hours, but most professional shoots are 10 to 12 hour days. Those are the types of shoots that I like to get, that you want to get. It also enables you to take advantage of kind of the tax optimization perspective, right? Because if you're limiting your shoot days to 14 days a year, you want to optimize each day, right? And so, in terms of, to kind of, I guess, come full circle on your profitability question, $600 an hour times 12-hour day, $7,200, 14 days is $100,000, and that's tax-free, right? So, that's probably closer to like $150,000 pre-tax equivalent. So yeah, that's why we try to optimize. And, for us, my wife and I, we don't like to exceed 14 days. Other people, if you want to, you can go as much as you want. You just have to adjust your pricing accordingly. It's supply and demand.
All right, cool. So I think we're running a little short of time. One last question I wanted to ask is, what's for people out there who want to, get into this business of renting it out, what will be your first word of advice?
Yeah. So first piece of advice, I think you want to learn about, I have a course, so I'm gonna, if I'm allowed to plug that, I will say, learn as much as you can, so you can kind of avoid many of the mistakes that I've made, right? So, I mean, I put together a course, the Film Shoot Rental Roadmap, to really teach people how to very quickly go from kind of not knowing where to get started, what to do, to step by step, everything you need to know to start earning thousands of dollars per day for renting your home for shoots. So that's kind of my biased recommendation, but if in general, I would say get to know your local municipality. So there are regulatory issues that you need to be concerned with, right? And so you want to find out about just about every municipality has a filming policy, right? So you want to become familiar with that. You want to become familiar with the office in your local city or town that administers that policy. You want to understand, is a permit needed? Are there restrictions on the time of day that I can do shoots, or the days, or anything else, right? Every town's a little bit different, but every town is very this is a very common permitting process as well. So,
all right, cool, Josh. Sounds good. All right, thank you so much for coming on the Next in Time podcast, and we would love to have you on another one so that we can talk more about this whole idea of film shooting for rental income. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you in another podcast. So yeah.
Great. All right, ST. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Next in Time podcast. We hope you enjoyed diving into the intriguing vision of our guest today. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media to stay updated on future episodes. If you have any suggestions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.